What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Fit to Fat to Fit Experience podcast. I'm your host, Drew Manning. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I'll be flying solo today. We have a special guest from the UFC, you guys, none other than Charlie Brennaman, aka the Spaniard. So any of you that are UFC fans, I know who this is. I'm so excited and honored to have this guy on. He's the second UFC fighter to come on. I think I should start a trend here where I'm going to start bringing on UFC fighters onto the podcast. For all you ladies out there, there are still a lot of lessons that can be learned. Charlie is a dad. He has a daughter. He's married. And so he brings a lot of the family aspect into this interview. So what we do is we dive into, obviously, his career as an MMA fighter, him growing up as a wrestler, how he transitioned from wrestling to MMA. We talk about his wrestling days and how that affected his relationship with food, and both the good and bad ways. And then we dive into nutrition as a UFC athlete, where he's at now, some tips and tricks that he has used over the years to help him overcome some obstacles and some of his daily routines. And I even introduced him to the spinach shake recipe, which he was definitely excited about. So we'll see if he implements that into his lifestyle. Charlie the Spaniard Brennaman, he's a professional mixed martial arts fighter, speaker, mentor, and author. Following a successful high school wrestling career, Charlie took his talents to Lock Haven University, where he achieved a top 12 finish at Division I Nationals and first team All-Academic. After teaching Spanish for 3 years and winning Spike TV's Pros vs. Joes, Charlie decided to leave his job to pursue a master's degree and begin his professional fighting career. The Spaniard was born in 2011. He was ranked as high as number 7 in the world, and in 2015 he published his autobiography called Driven: My Unlikely Journey from Classroom to Cage. Charlie currently lives in Pennsylvania with his wife and daughter. Okay, before we jump into today's episode is brought to you guys by DollarWorkoutClub.com. For those that don't know what DollarWorkoutClub.com is, they've been our sponsor for a long time now. It's a company that me, Lynn, and Natalie Hodson all started. And basically what it is in a nutshell is you pay $1 per week. You get access to 5 at-home workout videos that you can stream to your computer, your laptop, your iPad, your phone. And the workouts are 10 to 20 minutes long. And they can be done at any fitness level, you guys. Beginner, if you haven't worked out in years, or if you're really overweight, or if you're old and you can't do a lot of movements, we have that level during the workouts. But we also have advanced. If you're in good shape and you do P90X and you do Insanity, you're going to be challenged in these workouts. And so they're all 10 to 20 minutes long. You also get access to 5 healthy recipe videos and 5 motivational videos. So that's 15 videos a week, and all you pay is just $1. There's no hidden fees. There's no contracts. It's just $1 a week for access to high quality content. So it's super affordable compared to people like Daily Burn and, Beachbody. Those subscriptions, you're paying like $12 to $15 a month. Ours is only $1 a week, you guys. So $4 a month. So check it out, DollarWorkoutClub.com. Now let's jump into today's episode with Charlie Brennaman, aka the Spaniard. All right, Charlie Brennaman, thank you so much for joining me here on the Fit to Fat to Fit Experience podcast. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing really well. I'm a little stuffy, so I apologize for the nasal voice, but otherwise I'm good.
Hey, it's all good, man. And you're cool if I call you Spaniard?
Absolutely. I prefer it. When I teach or when I do camps, I just tell the kids that my mom named me Spaniard, and that's my name.
That is so cool, man. And what age did you get that nickname?
That was given to me by my college wrestling coach every summer. I'll tell you the brief story. Every summer we would do these wrestling camps, and my wrestling coach is a super funny guy, funniest top 3 favorite people in my life. But he would give us all nicknames, and I had long curly hair at that point. I hadn't quite had a ponytail, but it was on its way. And he started calling me Antonio Banderas.
Oh, no.
And when I tell that story, kids don't laugh, but older people are like, nah, yeah, all right, I see it. And then little by little, that wasn't so tough, so he morphed it into the Spaniard.
That is cool, man. No, I kind of get that too. Sometimes people are like, oh, man, you look like that one guy from Dodgeball. I'm like, Ben Stiller? They're like, yeah. And like Zoolander, they asked me to do Blue Steel and Magnum, and it's kind of funny. So I can kind of relate to that, man. But anyways, man, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you. So you are my second UFC guest on, and I'm honored, man, because I'm a big fan. I love what you do, and I have a lot of respect for what you do. And so I kind of want to jump into you as a wrestler, because I can relate to that. I grew up wrestling since I was a little kid, in high school, a little bit in college, kind of shifted over to football. But what age did you start wrestling at?
I started wrestling when I was 8 years old. And I tell this story a lot when I speak, but when I was a kid, it was something that was kind of bred into me. My dad was a wrestler. My uncle was a state champion. He wrestled at Penn State University. So it was something that from a young age I was introduced to. And, probably when I was about maybe 8, 9, 10, my parents didn't necessarily pull me aside and say this, but in their actions, they said basically, if you commit yourself 100% to academics and athletics, and for me that was wrestling, then we'll support you in everything that you do. And that was kind of like the unwritten rule when I was growing up. They weren't riding me to get a job. It's like, you get up in the morning, you bust your butt, you go to school, you train after school. We'll take care of the rest.
That is awesome, man. That is great. And here's one of the things I kind of felt that I learned from wrestling. Like, first of all, wrestling was one of the hardest things physically and mentally I've done in my life, even to this day. I mean, maybe other than Fit to Fat to Fit, that was crazy too. But wrestling was so much harder than football was. Like, I thought football was a breeze, but what wrestling did for me is it made other obstacles in my life easier, because I knew I could get through. If I could get through a wrestling practice, yeah, I could get through almost anything. Do you feel like that was the same way for you? It kind of taught you a lot of life lessons.
Absolutely. I mean, I could give you 1,000 life lessons I learned from it now, but I'll just give you a small example. So whenever I graduated from college and my wrestling career was over, and I got a job teaching Spanish back in that's where Spaniard comes from too. I was a Spanish teacher. I forgot about that little tidbit.
Yeah.
But I remember sitting at work the first day, and I in the faculty room, you would hear other teachers complain about different things. And I remember, I was sitting at my desk, and I remember thinking, you're telling me that I can sit here and drink water all day? Like, that's it? I can just drink water? This is awesome. This is the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. So, yeah, it was just the appreciation of simple things really stuck with me.
That's really interesting. Did you ever have a love-hate relationship with wrestling where you're like, man, I hate this, but then at the end of the day, you loved it?
It was kind of a hate relationship, to be honest. But no, I mean, I loved it at the core, obviously, or I wouldn't have done it. But when that really, really rang true is when I was done with college. When I was done with college and I went back home to central Pennsylvania and I got a job teaching Spanish and I was coaching wrestling, at Nationals, when I lost my last match, I basically threw my hands up and said, come on, pizza, come on, Pepsi, I'm going to get fat, let's go for it. And then, when it was gone, and I tell this to young athletes all the time when I talk to them, when it was gone, man, that's all I wanted more than anything. And that's essentially what led me to becoming a professional fighter was that void.
Yeah. No, I can definitely relate to that. Let me back up a little bit to you as a wrestler, and let's talk about nutrition a little bit, because I felt I was the same way, where I learned a lot of great things from wrestling, but one of the things I think that came out of it was you're so deprived of food, at least in the old days, like when I was like, the way to cut weight was, okay, you restrict calories, you sweat it out, you do whatever it takes to lose the weight. And I think I kind of developed an unhealthy relationship with food in a way where I was like, as soon as the weigh-ins were done, I would stuff my face, As soon as wrestling season was over, I'd stuff my face. Did you look at food as fuel only with your relationship in wrestling? Like, what was your view of nutrition, and has it changed over the years? Yeah,
my understanding of nutrition, honestly, it really started late in my fighting career, and that's talking the last 2 years. When I was a kid, not even a kid, growing up, high school, college, I just looked at it like you said, like it was like, weigh in, eat a hoagie, eat this, eat that. So it certainly wasn't looked at as fuel. Whereas now it's like I'm not an expert by any means, I'm not certified, but I understand what macronutrients are. I understand what fiber does and insulin. And it's like, I had no clue. I didn't even know what those words were back then. So it was merely a thing that I couldn't have, and then a thing that I totally indulged in.
Yeah, and that was all the people on my wrestling, squad. Like the whole team, we would be starving together, which was kind of cool because we're all cutting weight, and then we would just like stuff our face and love the food that was in front of us, and then we knew we had to get back to cutting weight again. So you as a coach now, how do you help your kids develop a better relationship with food? Is it different nowadays for kids versus, for me and you back in the day when we were kids wrestling?
It's I do it in a very very user-friendly way. I give them like maybe 2 or 3 or 4 just specific things that, hey, do this every day and it's going to be much easier. And I mean, the number one is water. I mean, I tell everyone, not just wrestlers, anyone, but everyone I speak to, get yourself a water bottle that makes you feel good, right? That like the water looks all crisp and nice inside the bottle, and carry it with you all the time. That's it. That's it. Drink it all day. That right there solves a vast majority of the problems.
So you don't ask them to dehydrate themselves by not drinking the water so they can make weight?
No, I mean, certainly from a liability standpoint, I certainly do not do that. But,
no, that's good.
Honestly, I work with I work with wrestlers in a mentor relationship, but in terms of the hands-on coaching, I work with a variety of athletes with strength and conditioning, that type of training. So the hands-on with the wrestlers is less and less, but no, absolutely not. I would never encourage that.
Well, I think the way I look at things nowadays is there's more of a transition to an understanding of nutrition and how nutrition can actually help you as a fighter or as a wrestler. I mean, you look at these UFC athletes, and yeah, they have a lot more money than like a high school kid that just has a coach, and it's like, okay, he doesn't really have the knowledge how to help these kids. But I think it's kind of the knowledge is trickling down to these kids nowadays, like how to fuel your body so you can perform optimally in the ring when you're wrestling. Because you see these UFC fighters, and they have it down to a science where they can cut 10, 20 pounds in a matter of days to make the weight, and then they get their strength back up. Because that was the one thing I noticed as a wrestler was, you would deprive yourself, and then you would have an hour after weigh-ins to stuff your face with as much calories as you could, and then you just... I mean, for me, I dragged. I mean, if I could go back and change it now, I wish I had a better understanding of nutrition. I wish my coaches did. Because I could have been so much better, a better athlete. Do you feel like kids nowadays generally have a better understanding, and the coaches as well, to help their kids out?
Definitely, and I want to touch on something that we can come back to later if you want.
Sure.
But just to point out, you mentioned the UFC fighters, and I was a UFC fighter for many years. And I would say for much of my career in the UFC, I was about an average. In the UFC, I was about average. And we certainly don't have more money than the average kid. If you're talking about let's say a kid in high school whose mom's a teacher and whose dad is a teacher. Yeah. They're dealing with more money than we were, because it's not all, it's not always sunshine. So, but yeah, they definitely have more. They know more about it. And to touch on what you were saying, what I found worked best for me, and this is like against all sense, really, against all science, against everything. When I was, especially in college, I remember, we had the 1 hour weigh-in. So I would, start the week probably weigh in 65 or 70, and then I'd weigh in at 157. But an hour before we wrestled. I performed best when I didn't put much back in my body. Right, I drank a lot of water. The Gatorade would bloat me. I normally had water. I normally had a bagel, and then I would perform. And it's like, how the heck does that even happen? And truly, I don't know. And with the UFC, we get 24-hour weigh-ins, so we're able to. For example, I would wake up on a Monday weighing 169, and I fought at 155. And that was nothing, because I was super hydrated. I'm drinking 2 pounds of water a day. I'm eating, with all that water intake, I'm not really that hungry. So I'll have salad, eggs, maybe a little piece of chicken for dinner. So I'm getting 3 meals. And then, that 10, 15 pounds comes off in, 2 workouts basically.
Yeah, I know, man. Things are different nowadays, and thanks for correcting me on the whole money thing. I guess what I was trying to say is that the UFC fighters have access to coaches for the most part, that know more about nutrition, help them out with that. But that's great, man. That's a great segue into what I wanted to talk about next, was your transition from wrestling to MMA. At what point after your college career did you say, okay, I want to test the waters out as an MMA fighter? And then how was that transition from a wrestler as your base to all of a sudden learning these other arts?
Yeah, that was a perfect transition. It's. I mean, we didn't, listeners, but it's almost as if I said, "Hey, Drew, ask me this question."
Exactly.
I distinctly remember. So one of my good friends in fighting is named Frankie Edgar, and Frankie was a UFC champion, and he hypothetically could have hopped in for this fight against Conor McGregor, but he didn't. But I distinctly remember Frankie. We wrestled in the same conference in Pennsylvania when we were in college. And I distinctly remember in between class when I was at this point, towards the end of my first year, into my second year, I was very restless. I was very, not content. I needed to compete again. And I just sat down in between class and I saw that Frankie had signed to the UFC. And I remember getting into my email and I remember emailing him saying congratulations. And it was just so neat to me. But then as soon as I hit send, it was almost like, dang, maybe I can do that. And that was the first seed of, maybe I'm going to do this. And then, it took, I fought a bunch of amateur fights when I was teaching, so that was kind of fun. I also
how was that? Like, as a teacher, did you tell your students? Did you hide it from your students? Did you come in with a black eye, or how was it? I won. I had 5 amateur fights when I was teaching, and I won those fights. So, I didn't come out with black eyes, but I'd put the videos up on YouTube, and I was very lucky. The administration, and I write about this in my book, but the administration was very supportive. They understood, and I had actually had a stint on reality TV when I was coaching or when I was teaching as well. I was on Pros versus Joes on Spike TV. I remember that, man. Yeah, and you won for season 1, right?
Yeah, I won the finale. So that kind of, the administration kind of started looking at me like, this guy's a little bit different. We're going to support what he does. So when I started fighting, it was, I certainly didn't, bring it up when I didn't have to bring it up, but it was something that as long as I, did my duties as a teacher, they were okay with. It's funny, man, because like you said, I listened to your episode with Rich Franklin. It was awesome. And the movie with Kevin James, off the top of my head, I forget. But I mean, that really was my life. And I know Rich has his own story, but I walked in on Monday morning and the kids were bringing the videos up on YouTube and
just like the movie, man. The kids are like, "Oh, dude, my teacher's a bad A. Like he fights on the weekends. He teaches us during the week." That's awesome, man. So back to your transition. You talked to Frankie Edgar, planted that seed, and then where did you go from there? Like, did you just what was the next step? Did you go find a jiu-jitsu gym, or what did you do from there?
Yeah, again, awesome transition. But I did, kids, I get a lot of emails. How'd you do it? I did just that. I looked for the closest gym around. And I'm from rural Pennsylvania, all right, between Philly and Harrisburg, between Philly and Pittsburgh. And there's not, when I say high level, so I speak as my reference is like the best. So when I say I want to train, it's like I want to train with George St. Pierre or I want to train with Frankie Edgar.
Yeah.
So in Pennsylvania, those guys don't exist, right? They're not there in professional fighting. So I found a gym probably about 45 minutes from my house who had a great, my first coaches were tremendous. And I would just, I'd teach all day and then I'd drive the 45 minutes a couple nights a week and I got my feet wet. And I had 5 amateur fights and, still muchly at this time, I was just wrestling. I was learning the stand-up art, but it's not something I took to naturally. And jiu-jitsu was limited around where I was. So, I was learning it, but muchly I was just relying on my wrestling. And then when I made the decision to leave my teaching job and move to Eastern Pennsylvania and then eventually New Jersey, that's when I really started to learn and I really started to be around. I trained with Frankie on a regular basis. I trained with another fighter, Eddie Alvarez, on a regular basis. So those guys really, really introduced me to, this is the world of professional fighting.
That is so cool to see that transition. And here's one thing I've always noticed as a UFC fan or MMA fan in general is like wrestlers make great MMA fighters because if they have wrestling as the base, they can get away with their weaknesses a little bit, because if you can take someone down and stand over them and ground and pound them, I mean that's a great That's a great strength to have, like, as your base. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you got away with it in the beginning because you didn't have the boxing or jiu-jitsu or the stand-up game like other people have, but you have the wrestling down.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it's like going into a knife fight with a gun. It's just something that wrestling teaches you such. And I don't say this. And another thing I like to say a lot is wrestling is who I am and fighting is what I do. So like the person that I am in my soul, in my heart, in my brain, that's all from wrestling and the things I've learned. But from a physical standpoint, I mean, the sport teaches you just how to handle yourself, handle your body, how to move left and right and get up, get down, things that I take for granted. And then when I watch other people do it, I'm like, whoa, they were not a wrestler, were they?
That's interesting. So let me ask you a kind of a general question here, but I think it can be applied in a lot of areas of people's lives. What's one thing you know now? How old are you now?
35.
You're 35. Okay, yeah, we're the same age. Oh yeah, dude, you graduated in 99, right?
Yep.
Same here, man. That's
nice.
Funny.
Nice.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you would have known as a UFC fighter? Like one thing you think you would have helped you out, whether it's physically, emotionally, nutritionally, anything?
Well, when I got released from the UFC in like a year and 4 months ago, maybe, and in that time, for much of my career, I like I said, I'm a wrestler, so I got a lot of flack because people generally say that wrestlers are boring fighters. So, I really took that personally, and I allowed that to change me as a fighter. I allowed that to make me think in my head, okay, I'm going to be a stand-up fighter now. I'm going to be a stand-up fighter now. When I should have been thinking, okay, let's become a better ground fighter. Let's start finishing fights rather than winning decisions. So the thing I would say to me is Charlie, don't try to become a stand-up fighter. I would say focus on what you're best at and build on that asset. I don't know if you're a fan or you ever listen to Gary Vaynerchuk, but he's super dude in general. But that's what he always stresses is screw your weaknesses and focus on what you're best at. And that's what I wish I would have done the last year in the UFC.
Interesting, man. Yeah, because you see that. Watching a UFC fight, people will boo if there's no big knockouts or no submissions. People, like they say, GSP was a boring fighter because he would win by decision most of the time, but he's one of the greatest fighters to go, in the UFC, and so that's a great lesson to learn. So many of us are influenced by the opinions of others, and we feel we need to change so we can be accepted or be exciting. But if you just stick to who you are, man, that's the best way to do it. That's a great life lesson in my opinion. So thanks for sharing that, man.
My pleasure.
So what are some obstacles you've had to overcome? I know that you had didn't you have a broken orbital bone at one point in time? And
yeah.
How was that? Maybe talk about that or some other obstacles that you've had to that were hard for you.
Two that stick out.
Okay.
One that this will be the second time I've ever said it in public. But the first was the orbital socket. So when I had moved to Eastern PA and I was training with Frankie, another one of his friends, Chris Ligori, who was also in the UFC, I would drive the South Jersey. So I would drive 2.5 hours to train with these guys and then hop in my car and drive right home. So I did that for 7 or 8 years. Like that was my life. But one time it was in May and I had a fight the next week, but me, Chris, and Frankie were sparring and it was the last hard session. And it was like 100 degrees in the gym, and it's just the three of us, and we're going balls to the wall. And, I trusted them, so they weren't trying to knock me out. They were much better than I was at that point. And so Chris throws a round kick, a head kick, and I kind of flinched, because I was still kind of new to the game, and I flinched, and I kind of leaned back. And he pulled the kick, meaning he let off some of the power, and his toes lit right in my eye socket.
Oh,
and
man.
It smashed, and I fell to my knees, and I felt the most intense pain, and my eyes were wide open, but I couldn't see a thing out of my left eye, and I was on my knees. It's terrible, man. I threw my gloves off, and I like had both eyes wide open, but couldn't see, and then I saw from my right eye, I saw blood squirting. I was like,
oh my
God, I think he kicked my eyeball out of my head. So I remember reaching my hands up. I'm doing it now, sitting here. I remember reaching my hands up to my eyeball thinking, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then I touched it and I was like, oh, I have it. But then I was like, well, what the heck is wrong here? What's going on? And, but yeah, I had ended up blowout fracture my eye socket, and took me to Newark, New Jersey, and had to rest for a while, go back home, come back, get surgery, had double vision for quite a while. And, thankfully it all worked out. And, I have 2 eyeballs and I see out of both of them.
That's great. That's crazy. What was the other one you're going to share?
So, and again, I write about this in my book, so that's why I can talk about it now. But almost 4 years ago in 3 days, I actually had a stroke. I woke up one morning and I was living with my roommate in Jersey, and I went to the bathroom, and I went to go from the toilet to wash my hands, and I turned, and all of a sudden the room started spinning at like 100 miles per hour. And honestly, it was probably 5 seconds later, I looked down and my sweatpants, which were gray, were soaked through with sweat, and I was dripping sweat terribly. I couldn't stand, so I fell down to the ground, and the world was just spinning and spinning and spinning. And I called my roommate, who thankfully was home, and she came over, and I remember I said to her, I said, Jackie, my tongue is going numb. And then fast forward a little bit of time, and I crawled / she pulled me over to the guest room, and I remember thinking the weirdest thing. So she was going to call an ambulance, and I was like, no, don't. I feel like sometimes the ambulance ride is not covered by insurance. Right?
Oh, man.
So I was worried about paying $700 for an ambulance when I could be dying. So I ended up laying there for a good 4 days. I couldn't open my eyes or I'd throw up. Like literally, if I opened my eyes, I would throw up. And towards the end of the week, I was able to slowly get out of bed. And then fast forward a couple days, I still felt off. And so I was telling my parents, I was like, I don't feel right. I don't feel right. And they're like, oh, you're okay. You're okay. You're okay. And I was like, no, I am not okay. So I went and got an MRI, and they saw a mark on my scan. And then I had to go through a bunch of tests, but they determined that I had a stroke. And through all the testing, they weren't able to explain why it happened. And, my fighting career at that time, it was like, what the heck's going on? And so I was, that was a rough thing to go through. I thought, I'm 20, I think I was 29 at the time, or maybe I was 29 or 30 at the time. And I had a stroke, and I was like, what is this? Like, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to have to say that, but I did. And it's a part of my life and my story, and got through it, thank God, and on the other side to talk about it.
So yeah, that's super interesting. First of all, I'm glad that you're okay now, but and thanks for talking about that. Like, so the doctors don't know why that happened. Like,
no,
still to this day, they don't know if it was stress related or.
No, they the reason I was able to continue fighting, and I got clearance from 2 different neurologists. They said it had nothing to do with trauma, and we don't link it to that. I forget the word that they used, but it meant whatever word they used meant that we don't know the cause of it. I got blood work, I got MRIs, MRAs, I got heart, every heart exam, everything.
So, and you're perfectly healthy now.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So what did that teach you? Did you kind of take your health a little bit more seriously at that point in time? Like, okay, I need to be careful. Like, I had a stroke at 30 years old. Yeah. I don't want to die before I'm 40. What changes has that made on you over the years?
Yeah, first of all, for a long time, I want to say 2 or 3 years, I was paranoid about everything, like everything. And my wife now, my girlfriend then will be like, Charlie, stop. And I'm like, no, but I have a bump here. Look, feel that bump. You feel that bump? What do you think?
Oh, yeah.
It was terrible, man. I would take all these like self-balance tests. I'd be like, am I dizzy right now? Am I dizzy? No, I'm not dizzy. Well, I think I would talk myself into everything. But I hit a point where I thought, all right, Charlie, get over it. It happened. Life insurance is now a lot more expensive, but whatever, you're living. Yeah, it taught me the opposite, like, to live, right? Live, because you don't know when it's going to happen. So just live. That's what I eventually walked away with it.
That's crazy. So that's scary. So which one of those two was harder for you to overcome from like a physical standpoint, like the recovery period? I'm assuming the stroke, like the recovery period for that was just rest and kind of take some time off for a little bit. What about the orbital bone?
You know what? Neither of them. Yeah, I mean, neither of them were really that intense recovery because the eye socket. I mean, my doctor. It was like 6 weeks afterwards that I was proposed a fight, and I talked to him, and he said, "Well, it's not 100% ideal, but yeah, if you want to fight, I'll let you fight." I was like, "Okay, super." I didn't, but gotcha. I could have.
Well, yeah, I guess the reason I ask is because I have a lot of followers who, their focus is health and weight loss and things like that. And they'll reach out to me and be like, you know what, I got an injury. And it wasn't so much the physical trauma that they went through, but it was more so the emotional, like, I'm not able to exercise. I'm not able to work out. And it affects them on an emotional level. And a lot of them let themselves go. And they're like, you know what, I'm just depressed. I'm going to live this way until I can get back, but then after that it's too late. But it sounds like you didn't have to go through any of that emotional toll of kind of being depressed or sad about your situation.
Well, I didn't so much in the recovery phase, but both of those instances for a period I thought I wasn't going to fight again, and that was taking away my complete identity. So to that, with what you're referring to with your listeners, it's like focus. I say this to everyone I work with is control the controllables. So what can you do? And whatever you can do, do it. So when I fractured my eye socket, I couldn't have any contact. But what I could do is I could do an elliptical, or I could jump rope, or I could do other, a shadow box. So those are the things that I did. When I had my stroke, it was kind of the same. At first I couldn't do anything, but then it was like, all right, you can walk, you can jog, you can run. And I found a way to get that same exertion in a different way by doing the things that I was still able to do.
Yeah, no, that's a great lesson. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, look, even if you can't exercise, like you've broken your legs and your arms and you can't move at all, what you can do is control what you eat. So focus on your nutrition, still eat clean, and you'll come out of this a lot better. Your recovery will be a lot quicker because there'll be less inflammation in your body. And so I try and tell people to focus on what you can control, like your nutrition. So that's a great lesson, man. Thanks for kind of talking about the same thing there.
And let me interject there also. My obviously you're super into fitness. One of my friends from when I was living in New Jersey is Steve Weatherford. He's the punter for the Giants.
Oh yeah.
Super, super fit. And I remember I texted him and I said, "Hey Steve, I have a question." I said, "What percentage of your physique is the result of working out? What percentage is a result of your diet?" And he said something like 90% is from my diet. So the power of your diet is I mean, I don't want to say it's bigger, more important, but it's certainly as important as the actual exercising part of it.
Yeah, no, and that's true. I mean, I know who he is, man. He's in great shape, and he talks about nutrition, and that's the thing. Yeah, we try and get across to people is here's the thing. A lot of athletes, former athletes, think I can work out all day. I can do wrestling, can do football, but when it comes to the nutritional part, in our younger years, we could get away with eating whatever we wanted to, and exercising it off. But nowadays, like once the athlete has been taken out of the sport, and they're not working out like an athlete, they still continue to eat like an athlete. They're just fueling their body with all these calories that they're not burning off. And so it's a tough transition for a lot of athletes, I've noticed, into the real world. So that's kind of another good segue, man. We're kind of on the same page here where I want to kind of transition into where you're at now. How do you balance your family life with your health? How do you balance all that? And then how do you also be at a place where you're content in your mind with not competing in the UFC and that void that you said was there after wrestling in college? Where are you at now? Are you emotionally content with where you're at?
It's extremely important. So one of the, this isn't necessarily my thing, but what I have learned is, peace of mind is like $1 million to me. Having peace of mind is the most important thing to me. So where I'm at right now, I'm not retired from fighting, but as each day passes, it seems less and less likely that I will fight. But so I've begun a speaking career, and I work with a variety of people. I mean, young people, old people, and I share my story and teach the lessons and the guiding principles that I've acquired throughout, a life that saw me leave a standard job and become number 7 in the world in professional fighting, reality TV, an author, etc. But I'm very, very content with what I'm doing now, and it's awesome to be able to help other people. So for as long as I can remember, it's been about me. I train, I fight, I go home, I rest, I train. So now, I mean, very similar to what you do, it's like I'm helping and influencing directly other people. I've always served as an inspiration to people, but now it's like, no, I'm formally trying to help people. And it's a pretty awesome feeling. It's something that I didn't expect. I worried that when I'm done fighting, man, what am I going to do? Who am I going to be? But now it's like, well, this is awesome, dude. It's like I get the same satisfaction and I don't get beat up. This is very, very cool.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, man. I can kind of see how that can fill that void and provide happiness is when you're in the service of others. And that's kind of what you're doing now. And it's a great feeling to take away from that selfish feeling of, man, I want to be at the top again. I want to have that fame and that glory, and I'll miss that. But if you're out there, making other people happy and changing their lives, I mean, that is very fulfilling. I will say that, and it sounds like that's what you're doing. How do you balance? I kind of asked like 5 questions.
That's all right. I was going to say, where do you want me to start?
Yeah, so here you are. You have a daughter, right?
Yep. 2 years old.
You're a family guy. How do you balance a healthy life now? Because you teach, you coach, you work out. And how do you balance your family life with a healthy lifestyle? Is it possible to have the best of both worlds?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to try my darndest to have the best of both worlds, and it's a struggle, and we're figuring it out. I've been married for almost 3 years. I don't know exactly. 5/12/12 is when we got married. 5/12/12. I remember my anniversary. But what's helping us, and we're certainly not earning an A in this department, but is just setting parameters. I don't want to be, a millionaire if being a millionaire means that I'm not completely happy with my wife and my family life. That it's important for me to strike that balance. So maybe I'll only be a thousandaire, right? Not a millionaire, but I will have, a great relationship with my wife and my family and my children. But it helps to set parameters. I'm essentially working. I work from home, and I have my computer on the table, and my this there, and my that over there. But it really helps to set parameters, and I know that when my wife gets home at 3:30, from 3:30 to 7, it's off. Everything's off, and then from 7 to 9, that's my time to do what I need to do. But if I can't focus and be present 100% of the time when I'm with my wife and daughter, then the crap hits the fan, so to say.
Man, that is awesome. No, that's great. And that's actually a great tweet. What you talked about $1 million. Like, if I don't want to be a millionaire, if that means I have to, sacrifice family time and take away from the things that are really important. That's great. Because so many people are in this hustle where they're hustling to build this wealth, and they're sacrificing their health to do so. But at the end of the day, is that what's going to make them happier? No. So that's a great lesson for people to learn to live in the moment, especially with those ones that they love. And with your stroke story, man, you don't know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. Life is too short to take things for granted, definitely take things for granted. So, man, thank you so much for talking about that. Because here's the thing. I'm a family guy too. I'm the dad of 2 daughters, and I definitely try and show people you can balance a healthy lifestyle. It doesn't mean you need to go to the gym for 2 or 3 hours a day and leave your family behind. But a lot of people beat themselves up, I think, because they think it's selfish if they take away from their family time to go work out or to meal prep. But what I try and say to people is you're a better dad, or you're a better employee, or you're a better spouse if you take care of your health first, because your health transitions into your emotional well-being. And so you're not as grumpy, you're not as moody, your hormones aren't all jacked up if you take care of your health first. You're a better dad, a better spouse if you take care of your health. And you can have the best of both worlds. And you're a great example of that, man. So thanks for discussing that. What before we close here, Spaniard, I
don't want to close, Drew. Let's just keep talking.
We got time, man. I'm hoping you have a few answers for me here. What are some daily habits or routines that you stick to that make a difference in your life nowadays?
I was going to actually say this a minute ago whenever you were talking, but I get up very early, and I was going to say that to people. If you think you don't have enough time, if you think that you just can't. I just can't, man. I can't get my workout in because I have 2 meetings today, and then after the meeting, I got to take my kid to practice, and then I got to come home. It's like, okay, well, The Rock gets up at 4:19 in the morning, right? Yeah. So unless you're getting up at 4:19 in the morning, I'd say there is time, But I get up very early in the morning, and by very early, anywhere from 4:30 to 5:30, and I generally come downstairs and I hear so many people saying how it's so beneficial to drink water right away. So I just got in the habit of just drinking a glass of water. But then my real stuff that I consider is I read for 30 minutes every morning, at least 30 minutes, and I journal. I use a 5-minute journal, and I generally read growth-oriented stuff. I just read Mark Divine's book, Unbeatable Mind, and I'm reading Mindset by, I believe, Carol Dweck. So I read that type of book. And then aside from those 2 things to get my day started correctly, fitness is always – it's like if I have fitness and I have family and I have growth as in like stretching myself during the day, then that means I have a great day. If I don't, then – I'm probably sitting on the couch feeling guilty.
Those are great habits or routines to have. Have you always had those habits where you wake up, drink water, and read a book for 30 minutes? Or has that kind of been your routine now that you're a family man? Like, when did you pick that up?
Yeah, within the last 2-3 years, probably. The reading is something I've always been a reader. Mm-hmm. Actually, you know what started me reading is the Da Vinci Code. Oh. Dude, the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons, if you haven't read them, read them. They're the most amazing books I've ever read in my life. But that got me started reading, and then I've been a reader, but starting to do it in the morning is probably within the last 2 years when I've ever since I got knocked out, we were talking about that really set me on a course of personal development and trying to stretch myself. So the last 2 years mainly for that.
No, that's cool, man. And then what do your workouts look like now versus when you were a UFC fighter? And are you just working out once a day for 30 minutes, 45 minutes? What is your workout routine now?
I would say my workouts are between, 30, if I just do like an interval run, 30 minutes, and then if I do a lift, normally an hour. But I like to incorporate a couple key things into my workouts. So one, I love intervals. So especially when I run, I do intervals. I'll go for a 30-minute run, and I'll maybe do 15 minutes at 8-minute pace, but then the last 15 minutes are sprint to that telephone pole, jog to the next one, sprint to that tree, jog to the next one. I love that feeling. It makes me feel alive, and it makes me feel challenged. I love, functional training, doing different stuff, to put it a simple way, different stuff. Slams and med balls and bags and pull-ups and push-ups. And and then I just love always pushing my mental toughness. So I do a lot of circuits, a lot of circuits, intervals, and functional training. That's really what makes up my training regime.
And how often, as a UFC fighter preparing for a fight, how many hours a day were you working out? Just curious.
You know what? For me personally, hours in a day, it would fluctuate, but I would say anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours.
Oh, really?
That's
like prepping for a fight even.
Yeah, because here's the deal. What we do, so my 30 minutes, that's like the worst workout, toughest workout I have. Anyone out there, Drew, I'd recommend you try it too. Put the treadmill on 10% incline and 10 miles per hour.
Oh my gosh.
And do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, and do 3 5-minute rounds of that with a minute in between.
Oh, it's tired.
It's miserable, dude. But then, so I would wake up in the morning and maybe do a strength and conditioning for 45 minutes to an hour. And then later that day, either do sparring or do a mitt work. And that's, only an hour and a half. So it's guys who tell you that they train 8 hours a day. Either I just was so wrong, or I've never met those guys because everyone I train with has not trained that much.
Yeah. No, I think the philosophy nowadays, and mine is, training smarter, not longer. Like you don't need to do it if you're doing it smart. Like those intervals, I mean, that's a smart way of doing it. Instead of just jogging for 60 minutes, you burn more calories, get more benefit from a 20-minute interval training. So, what's your go-to breakfast? Like, what are you, a routine guy? You have the same thing every morning? What do your breakfasts look like?
You know what? I'm like, maybe you can help me here. I'm terrible with breakfast. Honestly, Drew, I would go from this is what I used to do. I used to wake up in the morning, have a glass of tea. And when I say tea, I mean a lot of sugar and milk with a tea bag. that used to be, but I've gotten off sugar this year. That was a big thing that I tried to do. And then I would get 2 workouts in, and then eat 2 balls in the wall workouts, and then eat for the first time at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Oh wow!
So for me, and for anyone else out there, what's a good simple breakfast that I could start eating that is easy to prepare, easy to form a habit, but also beneficial?
I got the perfect thing for you, man. And people, a lot of people know this recipe because I gave it to Dr. Oz when I was on his show, and I gave it to Whoopi Goldberg when I was on The View. It's called my spinach shake recipe, man. Super famous recipe and super simple. Tastes good. It looks gross because it's green, but you don't taste the spinach. So what it is, and I'll give the recipe right here. It's 3 cups of spinach, 1/2 banana, 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, 1 scoop of vanilla whey protein, about 2/3 cup of unsweetened almond milk, and then like 2 to 3 cups of ice. Put it in a blender, blend it up. You got your fats, proteins, carbs, and it tastes delicious, and it's super simple. And that is probably my go-to breakfast. Super easy to make. So many people just switch out their normal breakfast of bagels or waffles or whatever they eat in the morning, switch it out for the spinach shake. You get a lot of nutrients as well with the spinach, because most people don't eat 3 cups of spinach, you know?
Yeah. I'm gonna text you after this to get that recipe again. And when I was talking with Dr. Oz and when I was talking with was it Whoopi
Goldberg,
just 2 of my friends, we were just chilling out.
Yeah, we're just hanging out, like having spinach shakes on the beach. Oh, just kidding, man. No, that was back in the day when Fit to Fat to Fit. I had no connections to those people. I had no media connections. I had no idea this would turn into a book or a brand or a podcast. I just kind of ran with it. I'm like, this is a crazy idea, but I think it'll benefit me. And then before you know it, everyone's calling, come on the TV show. So it takes a little bit of craziness sometimes to get people's attention and wake people up. So I have no regrets doing what I did, even though it was kind of crazy, man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so I have for you, Spaniard, some lightning round questions, which are kind of funny, kind of quick, and really fun part of my podcast. If you listen to the one with Rich Franklin, you're familiar with this part of it. Okay, first question for you, man. Would you ever do Fit to Fat to Fit? Do you think you could do something like this?
Wow. I think for free or for a lot of money?
Well, that's okay. That changes it. Let's say for free first, and then for money, how much would it cost?
Wow. I'm not sure, dude. If I was all in like you, yeah, but no. As the Spaniard, no, I could not do it. How much money? I don't need much, man. I just need enough to get by. So good median salary
to pay for the food, at least.
Yeah, without a doubt.
That's funny. No, man. Most people, like Rich Franklin, he said no, of course. Most people say no because, here's the thing. It is a TV show now. There are other people doing this. But at the same time, man, I think you're similar to me because as a wrestler, like, we love food. We could eat food. But then after a month of it, you get sick of it. You're like, oh, I don't know if I could go this long for 6 months with no exercise. That's the other thing, is you can't exercise. So it gets hard, man. So I don't blame you for not wanting to do it. But hey, if you do want to try out for season 2, they are casting for season 2.
I think I'll politely decline.
Yeah. Okay, next question. This one's kind of funny, but could you take Conor McGregor?
Yes, I could, and I'll fight him this week if Nate Diaz gets hurt.
Dude, that's crazy. So, kind of a side question. You said Frankie Edgar could have taken this fight?
Well, he did. So I guess they approached him, but I guess he tore his groin. But now there's a bunch of he's all he's pretty infuriated because the UFC is making it sound like he turned down the fight just because he didn't want the fight.
Really? Because he was injured?
Correct, but he's seriously injured. So,
well, that's good that we're getting that out there on the podcast for people to know, so, because, man, I would love to see that fight. I would love to see Frank Edgar. I was excited for, damn it, what's his name? Shoot.
Dos
the guy,
Anjos?
Dos Anjos. That broke his foot, man. I thought he would be a great matchup. Yeah. So
I want to say also to kind of plug these two guys, Frankie Edgar and Eddie Alvarez are two. If you like them out there, if you're a fan of them, they're as cool as you would hope that they are. They're such awesome guys and helped me tremendously in my life and my career. And I can't stress that enough that those two guys are just two stand-up guys.
Well, no, and I appreciate you saying that because I know Frank Edgar's a cool guy. He's humble. I hated him for a little bit because I was a huge BJ Penn fan.
I hated him
because he was so good, and me being Hawaiian and BJ Penn is from this island. I actually saw him out here in Kona one day, but I didn't have the balls to go up and talk to him because he was with his family. But I was such a big BJ Penn fan. But he's got my respect now, man, and he's such a humble guy. I can tell. So it's good to hear that on the inside. You got the inside scoop.
Yep.
Who's one fighter you'd never fight in the UFC that you're just like, no way, man, that guy's crazy or too scary?
There's not many people I'm afraid of. I fought Rumble Johnson, I fought Johnny Hendricks, but there's one kid, and you're not going to know his name, but I would advise everyone to look him up. So there's only one person I've ever said that I would not want to fight, and that the kid's name is Adlon Amagov. So he fought the UFC a couple times, but Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Yep.
Khabib, okay, so there's this onslaught of Russians coming into mixed martial arts, and they are all lethal. But there was one of them who literally was like the first Russian to come over to America because my coach over in Jersey facilitated it. So thanks, coach, for bringing all these tough Russians over. Anyhow, this kid used to train with us, Drew, and he didn't speak any English, and I would signal, don't kick my head, and he'd smile and say, okay, and then he'd kick my head, and I'm like, don't kick my head. This kid was the most lethal kid ever. If you Google his name, just type in Adlon UFC, Adlan UFC, it'll come up. Man, he's got the craziest kicks, punches. They call him the Wolf, because he comes from the Caucasus Mountains over in Russia, and his people are people of the wolves. And so he's Adlon the Wolf Amagov. Man, he is lethal, and I would never want to fight him.
He looks scary. I just Googled the picture of him, man. He does look scary.
But the thing is, man, they're all so nice. They're all smile at you and then just destroy you.
Okay, what's your favorite cheat meal? What's your favorite guilty pleasure food?
Man, I love chicken wings, pizza, and Pepsi. Those are like
you're a Pepsi guy, huh?
Oh my gosh, I have to limit myself, man. I drink it one day a week now because if I let the floodgates open, I'll drink 32 ounces a day.
Oh man, that's crazy. So how often do you eat those? You said once a week with the Pepsi. What about the pizza?
I've actually tried to do that as well. Talking nutrition, I've kind of limited it to just one day a week where I don't want to say it's a necessary cheat day, but if I want to have a crappy meal, I'll have a crappy meal. But I try to limit that to once a week.
Okay. What's been your most embarrassing moment in the UFC or wrestling growing up? Something that stands out. The first thing that comes to your mind.
Well, getting knocked out on live TV is terrible. So that was pretty bad. But when I was a kid, when I was 12 years old, I was at Junior Olympic Wrestling States. I was in the semis.
Yeah.
And my dad, prior to the semifinals, this was my first possibility of winning a state title, and my dad couldn't find me, and finally when he did find me, I was up at the snack bar, right? So then I'm in the middle of the arena wrestling, and all of a sudden I keep trying to call a timeout. My dad's saying, no, get in there, get in, you're tough. So after the third time I threw up, and here I had eaten a super slim, one of those 16-inch Slim Jims.
Yeah.
Yep. Threw it up all over the mat in the middle of the wrestling tournament, so that was pretty embarrassing.
Oh man, that is funny, man. Yeah, there's always some crazy wrestling stories. I knew there was going to be something there. What's one thing you can't live without besides your family and house and car and things like that? What's one thing that you're kind of addicted to that you have to have, and whether it doesn't have to be food, but just one thing you can't live without?
That's a good one, man. You took away everything that I really care about. I mean, I'm a technology guy, dude. I'm addicted to my phone and my computer.
Okay, I think we all are, but yeah, I hear you. For me, I'll just kind of get. For me, I can't live without chapstick. Like I have to have chapstick after I brush my teeth. I hate the feeling of my.
I got something along those lines. Dental floss.
Ooh, so you're.
Yeah, I have a very weird. Even my grandma noticed, dude. My grandma was like, "You really take care of your teeth a lot." I was like, "How do you know that?" I see you once every 3 months, and and that was enough for her to know that I'm kind of infatuated with my teeth.
That is funny. Well, that's a good habit to have at least,
Absolutely.
versus the opposite. Okay, last question, man. Predictions. Do you think Diaz has a chance?
No, I don't. I think he was, he was probably doing what the Diaz's do the last several weeks or months or whatever. And I think McGregor is like this type of mental. I don't even know what you call it, but he has got it. And I'm a fan of him. And he's brash and he's arrogant, but he backs it up, and I love it.
He does, man. Well, yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. I just don't see Diaz having a chance as far as his quality of a fighter. Because didn't he fight Dos Anjos a while ago and he got destroyed?
Yeah, Dos Anjos beat him up pretty good. Josh Johnson beat him up pretty good.
Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, Spaniard, man, it was such a pleasure. I know you have a cold, so I hope you get better. Really quick before we go, though, where can people find you, find your book, learn more about hiring you as a speaker, all social media, all of that?
Absolutely. Everything is hosted on my website, charlie-brennaman.com. If you have a tough time spelling my name, just type in Spaniard UFC and it'll come up. But yeah, I wrote my book. My book it chronicles my journey from the day that I said, hey, I think I don't want to be a teacher anymore. I think I want to be a professional fighter. I've gotten great reviews on Amazon. Check it out. And yeah, I mean, all my links are there. And, I encourage you to support the old Spaniard and enjoy yourself a nice read.
Yeah, and where on social media are you, and what's your handles?
Yep, Spaniard MMA. Spaniard MMA on everything except Instagram. I'm MMA Spaniard.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get that name. It's
someone took it?
No, I mean, it says someone took it. Well, now everyone's going to take it just to tick me off.
Yeah.
No, it says it's taken, but it's not taken. So I don't know what the problem is. If anyone out there has a friend who works at Instagram, can you please tell them to call me?
Yeah, I hate having to change it up, to switch it for just one social media. Yeah, okay.
You have such a unique one, though. You don't got to worry about it.
Well, for now that other people are doing Fit to Fat to Fit on TV, people might try and take it. But luckily, I got mine. It's there consistently across all social media platforms. But Spaniard, hope you get better, man. Please stay in touch with me. Seriously, man. And if I'm ever out there in Pennsylvania, or if you ever feel the need to take a vacation out here to Hawaii,
absolutely,
you let me know, man. And I'd love to stay in touch.
I appreciate it, man. And also, I want to give a shout out to you. I really enjoy your social media. I follow you on Twitter, and I love how you handle. You get a lot of different people feeling different ways about what you do, but I think you always take a really good stance in how you handle it. So,
hey, thanks, man.
For that.
I appreciate that. Now, I didn't know anyone noticed that. I try and treat people respectfully because I know they're not going to agree with me sometimes, but I try and handle it professionally. So, thanks. I'm glad someone appreciates it.
Definitely.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, Drew.
Thank you guys once again for listening to the Fit to Fat to Fit Experience podcast. If you liked today's episode and the other episodes you've listened to, please go to iTunes, subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review. If you like it, please leave us a 5-star review, of course, and tell us why you like it and how it's changed your life. Please recommend it to family and friends if you like certain episodes. If you guys have suggestions or guests you want us to bring on, please reach out to us. My social media handles are all at Fit to Fat to Fit with a number 2. So it's FIT number 2, FAT number 2, FIT. Lynn's social media handles are at 2Fit at Home, the number 2, FITATHOME. And we're both on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And my website is fittofattofit.com if you want to sign up for the newsletter to stay in the know about these podcasts. And Lynn's is 2fitathome.com, and she has a newsletter as well. Please, we'd love to hear from you guys. We get back to everybody, whether it's on social media or email. We love and appreciate you guys for supporting the podcast. We definitely want to keep this going long term. So please continue to listen in. We'll see you guys back here next week for another great episode on the Fit to Fat to Fit Experience podcast. See you guys. Have a good one.